episode 27. Last time we were talking about mishaps, injuries, and life in the training department for you. We're coming back to me on my timeline. When I was last up, I believe I got my last go in the Florida phase of Ranger School. And so I'll pick up there. Um, One of the things I wanted to mention, which is something that sticks out in my memory as I reminisce, as I look back on my life and my time in the service, a moment that was tough for me during Ranger School was, I mentioned how I recycled early on in the first phase of Ranger School, and while I was in the gulag, and learning, but also doing lots of chores is what you call it. But for some reason, why can't I think of what we call in the military? Um, when you have to clean up stuff, details.
I could think of a term for
Yeah,
it.
but details. One of the details I had to do is there was a graduating class that was about to graduate, and so I had to do. And the military loves to have you, especially the Army. I don't know about the Navy, but they love to have you rake things. So I had to. And on one detail, I've just failed. Okay, I'm recycled, and I have to go and I have to rake the graduation area of Ranger School. uh, I have to put pine needles. This is Georgia. This is Columbus, Georgia, Southwest Georgia. I got to rake pine needles and pine cones and put them into neat little like piles up next to the pine trees. Thankfully, we didn't have to actually pick them up.
Like, you mean like mulching the trees?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It looked good. I think it looked kind of
Yeah.
good.
Bet
I
it
wish
looked
I
great.
hadn't.
If it
I
looked
wish,
like your rucksacks looked, I could imagine it was perfect, like Augusta National.
and we had to sweep the road of pine, a lot of pine needles. Anyways, but that was a tough moment for me because I remember just being really dejected. I remember it was just so in my face that I was a failure.
Yeah.
I'm there at the graduation grounds, the
God.
bleachers, having to clean it, and it's at the very beginning, and I know I was like I haven't even gotten out of the first phase yet, and so that was a tough time. But at the end, how surreal it was to be riding the bus or whatever to the graduation grounds to graduate, and you know, passing where I was, a few months earlier, raking up pine needles, feeling pretty low, and now I'm at this high in the exact same spot. So, I mentioned that going back to, the purpose of what we're trying to share, just those moments where you overcome things and where you have hard times. But for me in my life, that was huge to be able to experience that growth, that have that moment. Um, so I graduate and I got to go back to my platoon. So one thing that also happened early on, and Steve and I can't remember if I talked about this. So if I did, you'll just get a double dose. Um, but one thing that happened early on, when I had my second go around, I believe, at the first phase, was I was in the call for fire simulator, and another guy from my company, but not my same platoon. He came up to me and he told me that what he said was, "Hey, did you hear about that?" He said, "You're from first platoon, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm from first platoon." Um, and he said, "Did you hear about the crash?" And I was like, "No, what crash?" And obviously, if a guy says your platoon and he says, "Did you hear about the crash?" I mean, that's just cold ice down your back, right?
Yeah.
Shivers. I'm like, "What crash?" And he's like, he said, "Yeah, there was a crash and some guys died." And I was like, "What?" And I'm just dazed. And I'm in ranger school, which is not helpful. But he's like, "Yeah, some guys died." And he said, "I think a guy named Garbs died." And Garbs was in my platoon. He was a private the same time I was, and I remember that guy's face, and I just wanted to like cave his face in for you know it's the way he said it, it's the way he came up to me.
Mm.
But I was mostly just angry because I was dealing with my first emotion was just anger for everything. So, but I remember that's imprinted in me. that moment because Ryan Garbs, he was in my platoon, and essentially what had happened, and I still to this day don't know all of it, just because, and I'll talk more about it as we go along, but I don't deal with death very well.
Yeah.
I haven't. Not that anyone does, right? But I especially my my preferred method is to just bury my head in the sand, mostly, to be honest. But essentially, what happened is they were in Afghanistan. They had deployed while I went to school, and I believe they were doing a CSAR mission, combat search and combat search and rescue, and essentially, from what I hear, the Chinook they were in um, had some kind of mechanical difficulty and basically fell out of the air and free fell and hit the ground, and I believe it killed the air crew or most of the air crew, and it killed two guys from our company, one from another platoon, and then Garbs.
Did
Uh,
anybody survive it?
there were survivors, yeah,
Wow.
and actually, um, so and this is where it came back to impact me in a little bit. My trajectory was because there was one squad from the other platoon, I believe, and one squad from our platoon that had paired up and was on the Chinook. And there was a squad leader from our platoon that took out a squad leader, two team leaders, broken all kinds of things, and another private was injured from our platoon. The private, actually, and I don't know if the other guys did, but when the bird crashed, the bird was on fire. That private, he had a broken back, and he took off his. We were wearing soft armor at the time, like a combination of soft armor and plates. He took off his soft armor, and with a broken back, he was beating out the flames inside, and he got the soldier's medal, right?
Wow.
And so the soldier's medal is like the highest like valorous non-combat action award. It's usually awarded for saving people's lives, and so
Yeah.
that's what he was awarded for that. But Garbs died, and Garbs. I just want to talk a little bit about Garbs. What I remember. So Garbs was actually in our platoon before me, and the nicest guy, absolutely the nicest guy. When I think about it, I always say he was such a nice kid, just because now I'm older, right? I'm in my
Mhm.
mid 30s. I look back, we were all kids, but he was a nice kid, a nice guy. Um, sometimes maybe it seemed like too nice, right? It seemed like maybe he wasn't in the right place, but he was tough. He was a really tough guy, very athletic, very strong. I'd read stories and hear stories about him wanting to join, the Rangers and what he did. Apparently, he got a hold of a rucksack. He's from Indiana, I believe, and he get a small town Indiana. He get a rucksack. And he put his little brother in it, and like he'd ruck in his neighborhood in his town, and training up to be a
Yeah.
ranger. He was one of those guys, and absolutely the nicest. He was in a different squad. The moments I had with him was, I had a truck. I was the junior enlisted who bought a new car right away.
There's a
That
few of
was
those
me.
out there.
That was me. I basically did all the cliche things. I had a good interest rate though. Okay,
Yeah.
so but he didn't have a car. He didn't have a car. So I would do these runs to the shopette, which is an on post like little gas station. Think of it like a seven,
Yeah.
like a military run 7-Eleven.
Mini
And
mart.
yeah, mini mart, exactly. And I do runs, we'd get off of work during the day and we're just getting crushed because we're new guy privates. And he would come, he'd bum a ride off me and say, "Hey, can I come with you, Nelson?" And we'd get in the car, we'd get in my truck and we'd drive down. And it was only like you know, less than a 5-minute drive, but it was, it we'd have music on. We wouldn't really talk, you know. We would just roll the windows down and just drive, and you're free from work, you're alive, you survive another day, as a new guy, and you're gonna go buy some stuff. And those are moments I remember about Garbs. He was such a great guy. Um, so yeah, it hit me, and it was tough, and it was right there at the beginning, and I didn't have any details, and I just had to keep at it and go to school, finish Ranger school. but you know, that was tough. That was the first one. That was the first loss of life for our platoon in a long time. Um, and it just hit us hard, and it also got me. It also started me down the path, talking about mental stresses. It just got started getting me down the path of the what ifs. It started early, you know,
Gosh,
because I had talked about how so Garbs had been in Garbs got there before me. From everything I saw, Garbs could have, should have been in school. Um, why I got to go and he didn't go, I don't
mm,
know. You know, it if
yeah,
he had gone and our platoon had one less spot, maybe I was the person who would have been the odd man out. Maybe I go on that deployment. Maybe his squad is under strength and then my squad is the one that takes that mission. Maybe we go down, you know.
easily.
So it was just very in my face how, whoa, like this is real. Again, this is a real deal. This could happen to us. So um like I said, I don't deal with death well. One thing I remember that happened was that Garbs's family came by,
Yeah.
and one thing we do well, unfortunately, we've got good at it was, you know, taking care of the families, or our best to take care of the families whenever someone will pass. And I remember they came up and my buddy was like, "Hey, Garbs's family's here, they're in a van out back." And I just couldn't bring myself to go say hi, you
Right.
know? I
Yeah.
just I just avoided it. I just
Yeah.
avoided talking to him. I never talked to him. And I never told him about, those moments that I had where, I'd look over and Garbs has got his hand out the side of the truck, he's playing with his hand in the wind and we're
Yeah.
driving in the mini mart. So,
Well, and you can kind of sometimes with you can beat yourself up over stuff like that. Maybe should I have said this? Should I have just told him this or that? But also you can't second guess yourself because you also, telling those really kind of precious times with this guy, your friend and your brother, it could cause them more pain. It
yeah.
could cause them more emotion. And it's such a swirl of you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
One thing I learned as a chaplain is you can never just like all you can do is say whatever you did, it was the right thing at that time because nobody knows death, and especially with somebody who's your brother and you've spent good times with, it's inconsolable. There is no comforting anyone in those times, and the people that try to really do the worst damage. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I've seen that too. I've
yeah,
seen that too. It's good intentions, but they're
yeah,
trying too hard. They're doing too much.
yeah,
So, but that's one of those things that stick with you. And so what ultimately happened was, okay, so we lost a squad leader. We lost two team leaders, you know. We basically lost a squad. So, if before I would have gone back to my squad to be a new tab, now I knew before I'd even graduated, well, I'm gonna have to be a team leader, some sort, probably a gun team leader when I get back. So that was kind of on my mind, and a little bit of motivation to know that my platoon was hurting and I needed to get back there to
yeah,
help
yeah,
because we just weren't when I was in, we just never got enough new guys. We never did. We were always under strength. There we weren't going to. And by the way, you could get a bunch of new guys and they don't have the experience, right? So
right.
I knew that I now had a responsibility. I did one deployment, I did one mission. I did one mission, but I had a training cycle, a workup or two at that point. So I was going to have to step up. Um, so I knew I was going to come back as a gun team leader. One aside, I thought I'd describe sort of how the resourcing works. So when you're a private, you could be in any of the squads. There are three in a platoon. Again, at my time, during my time, there are three assault squads and then a weapons squad. The assault squads were trained to do like the CQB, so do the assaulting. We'll just say
Mhm.
that. And then your weapons squad was where you had three machine guns, the three machine gun teams, and then the Gustav team, the anti-tank team. So usually, what happened in our platoon, the way we did it was, if you were private in an assault squad, when you got your tab, they would move you over as often as the manning would work. They'd move you over to the weapons squad to be a gun team leader because you knew how to do all the room clearing and stuff and you know, ambushes and that type of stuff. But you wouldn't have that intimate knowledge of the machine gun or the Gustav, you know,
Yeah.
weapon squad type stuff. And then, you know, on the reverse, if you were a private and you were on a machine gun team, when you went to school, when you came back, they put you in the assault squad
Oh,
as a tab, as an automatic, as the saw gunner.
yeah.
We didn't have saw, we had Mark 46s, which were basically saws. But they'd put you there because A, you knew machine guns really well. So it makes sense to give you the belt fed in the assault squad. And so that's kind of how the trade-off would go. So that's why I was pretty sure, because I came from an assault squad originally when I was a private. And so I figured I was going to be a gun team leader.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so graduated, came back. Yes, I'm a gun team leader. I go to the gun team, and you know, dealing with losing garbs, but getting into the training cycle. They've come back, so now I've got a full training cycle as a gun team leader ahead of me, and a lot of fun. You know,
Mm.
um, being in a weapons squad is an interesting experience. You know, I think a lot of people who spend time in a weapons squad will always have an affinity for being in a weapons squad, being a machine gunner. I
I
mean,
can see that.
yeah, I mean, there's no feeling like firing a true machine gun,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I know you had some time as a machine gunner too.
Yep.
So,
Well, let me ask you one clarifying
go
question.
for it. Yeah.
The Gustav, that's a Carl Gustav recoilless rocket,
Hmm.
or I think that's what it's called, right?
Re-
Um,
I think,
very
yeah, something
form,
like that.
yeah, something like that. Very formidable rocket. Did you guys ever use TOWs or AT4s?
Not in my time,
Okay.
but I think in the days before the GWAT, the Global War on Terror, Iraq and Afghanistan, I think the AT team would get some experience firing those things. But in
Yeah.
my time, no,
Yeah. Okay.
the Goose team, they just focused on the Goose.
Because it's funny, this showing my age. TOWs and AT4s, like we use those in the Gulf War. I mean, we didn't use TOWs. That was more of an army application. We used AT4s, which are shoulder fired anti-tank rockets, and we fired a few. But the Carl Gustav, I think it's Carl Gustav. I think it
Mhm.
is. But
It is. Yeah, it is.
yeah, the recoilless rocket, they're still around, and I mean, guys are using them up till today or yesterday or whenever we.
Yeah,
But
they're still
they were
using.
around in our time as well. So that's what's interesting.
I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere that it goes back to
Yeah,
maybe World War II,
yeah.
even the very
Eh,
first version of it.
yeah, and they've improved them, but it's just like to talk about something that stood the test of time, just like the M2
Right.
Browning machine gun. I mean,
Right.
that thing's been around a long time. But anyway, sorry.
So, yeah, so you said, I thought you said javelin, but AT4, yeah, we'd get range time and everyone would shoot AT4s, laws,
Yeah, yeah,
light anti-tank, rocket
yeah.
weapon, whatever,
Laws,
laws.
anti-tank.
But I think in the old day, my old days, which might have been your days, was where they would get time on toes or
Yeah,
javelins. So, man, so yeah, doing the training cycle, um doing, you know, working as a machine gun team, it's a unique experience, especially because we would, you know, we had a great squad leader who really went like old school with it. Like he loved for us to do gun drills, you
yeah,
know, like you put down put down the tripod, and then the
yeah.
AG, you know, you put the gun into the pintle or whatever, into the T&E, and working the guns that way. We went really old school, and we had a lot of fun. And it was fun because the weapon squad was 4 teams, and you had the team leaders were all, you know, fresh tabs, people right out of ranger school. So, you know, we're all stoked about having gotten the tab and sort of being a made man right now,
Right,
right? So we could
right,
relax a little bit and enjoy being a ranger finally.
right.
And then you had new privates, right?
Yeah,
In there to work, and now we have a responsibility to help mold them, which is good,
yeah.
because the most dangerous thing in a ranger platoon are the tabs who don't necessarily have leadership duties yet. They're the ones that kind of go around and just mess with folks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great system to where you're there, you're hungry. You not only do you want to perform well, but you also want to set a good example for the young guys. They're just fresh out. And yeah, that's a neat system the way it works. If it's working like it should, which is always you're always in a pipeline that's pointing you to a leadership position, which yeah, there's nothing like it because whether it's in a SEAL platoon and we're asked to plan a sniper mission, oh, I'm given responsibility. Okay, I'm ready to roll here. I'm ready
Mhm.
to really up the ante and show I'm worth a damn. And it just sets good vibes for everyone. You guys you're working with and the younger guys that are looking up to you. It's really cool. Can I circle back on one thing really quick because I'm so curious?
Go for it.
What is a call for fire simulator?
So this was weird. It was useless training. I'm sorry to say. Um, it was a screen. It was a very old. It's hard to describe. So we were in this giant, maybe like an auditorium. This was
Yeah.
in Ranger School. There's an auditorium. There was a giant screen, and it projected on this battlefield in front of us, and the entire class was packed into this same room, and there were like 2 or 3 stations where you'd get up and you'd do a fire mission, you know? Like you'd talk I think you would talk into a radio and you would call for fire, and then on the screen, you would see the round come in and impact. Presumably where you called for fire. It was the entire class. I never got anywhere near the equipment to be able to call for fire. So
You're just
I just
watching it.
I was just watching, standing in the back, trying to stay awake. That's it. And then having this guy come over and destroy my world, telling me that my platoon was hurt. So I got 0 training value out of it.
Okay.
I doubt they do that anymore.
Yeah. I
Because
figured it had to something to do with calling in fire, but I've never in my life have I been in one of those. And were they calling grid coordinates, I guess?
I uh,
Whatever.
yeah,
It doesn't matter.
I don't know. I suspect it was like your very basic old school, probably
Right.
like straight out of the field manual style
Right.
of calling for fire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. S-
Yeah.
Sorry to
No, no, that's a good clarification because it was strange. It did at the time. I was like, "Wow, what a waste!" You know,
yeah.
this is a waste.
I've seen some that are up there with that.
Do you know the uh, man, what do they call it? They have like where like a firing like an M6, like an M4, M16. They have like these digital firing ranges. Man, I can't remember
Yeah.
what they called that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it had that same look and feel. Just it was called for fire.
I'd heard about them, but
Oh, okay.
I never used one. Yeah, like like early generation.
Yeah.
Would you call it virtual reality or
Basically, yeah,
you
something
know,
like
they're
that.
trying real hard, but it was still hokey.
So, yeah, so I do that training cycle as a gun team leader, have a great time. I'm fully expecting to be a gun team leader for my second for our next rotation. Actually, I guess we don't do the full training cycle because what ends up happening, not maybe let's say halfway through the training cycle, which is about a 6 month period, um, uh, and halfway or 5 months into it, we get recalled one night. Now, you know this because I'm sure you were
Yeah, yeah,
subjected to it as well. But
yeah.
so the Ranger Regiment has a requirement, like a national requirement, where we have to have a battalion ready to go at any moment's
Right.
notice, on call, deploy within the world. I think they say 18 hours.
Yeah.
So
We
what
call it recall platoon, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, recall. There's some acronym and it has starts with R because everything in the Rangers does. It's Ranger something like Ranger readiness, I don't know. But we got recalled one night during the training cycle. And they do this periodically just to see if everyone shows up, who shows up drunk,
Right.
who drove, 2.5 hours to Atlanta to party that night when they
Right.
weren't supposed to.
Right.
So that's
Yep.
what we
We did
figured
the
it
same
was.
thing. Hmm.
That's what we figured it was, and I was in the barracks at the time. So they come knocking in, wake us up, and we go in there, and they're like, "This is 2007 sometime," and they say, "Hey, this is real. you guys are your company is surging forward. And this would happen sometimes. So I think I mentioned the battalions would rotate, would do a handoff.
Mhm.
But sometimes if stuff was kicking up, the next battalion would surge forward ahead of time to increase the
Right.
amount of rangers we had in the theater. So they said, it's real. You all are going. And as part of our responsibilities, we always had to have our bags packed and all that type of stuff. So at first they said, hey, you're leaving right away. And then I think we ended up having a couple days before they actually put us forward.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going forward in the middle of the training cycle. And I was going as part of the gun, as a gun team leader, as part of the platoon. But I believe it was just one company, just our company
Mhm.
that ended up going forward. And the reason why we went forward, and I've heard other people describe this event. So in 2007, I guess they thought they knew where Osama was, and so there was this huge event where they surged in a lot of folks to come in and assist with this. They thought he was hiding out in the mountains somewhere. They thought they knew he was hiding in the mountains somewhere, and so
Right.
it was this big tactical problem of okay, we'll send in the top folks to do it, you know, and everybody was there. Everybody showed up for this thing. So
Yeah.
there was CAG guys, dev good dev group guys. We came in. Everyone was participating. In fact, someone had told me, like, once we were there on the ground in Afghanistan, our PL was saying, they're saying that this is the largest operation that's been coordinated since the Normandy invasion. We were like, what? What?
Yeah.
Like that's saying a lot. And I guess it was because they didn't know exactly where he was, and
No.
they obviously because he wasn't there. Um, and so they expected him to run in the mountains. And
Right.
so it was the tactical problem of, well, how do you close off a mountainous region?
Right.
And so it would take obviously the forward deployed. So you had the tier one guys who were going to actually go to the suspected target areas, objectives, and try to root them out. But they fully suspected him to run and for them to not find the right place. And so they needed a bunch of forces to do blocking in the
Mhm.
mountain passes in the areas to try to catch him.
Was that
So
Tora Bora?
I don't remember. That's
I
I don't remember. It could have been. I don't know. I don't know.
think I
Um,
remember that whole fiasco, but
Well, yeah, the Tora Bora thing was definitely at the beginning of the war. I don't know if
okay.
that's where this thing was
Right,
going
right.
down. So we show up, and of course, there's nowhere for us to live because the 275 guys are already there, and they've got all the nice huts. So we're sleeping in tents. It could have been worse, but we're
Yeah.
sleeping in tents, and for a long time, we're just waiting around, right, while the largest planned a
Yeah.
tactical event is going on. So we're just sitting around and we're trying to do our best to train and be ready. And they actually did do the mission.
Yeah.
They sent the folks in. We were tasked with QRF. My platoon was tasked
Yeah.
with QRF. Another platoon from our company actually went in somewhere to observe. So they actually got in. They actually got inserted on the top of some mountain somewhere early on to observe any movement. And they stayed out there for like a week. Sucks for them. And we got all the food because what ended up happening was so the idea was we were QRF, our platoon was QRF, but they kept telling us that, well, you're QRF, but you're gonna get inserted. Basically, the second they start to see the movement, you all will be the first ones that they put into place to block that movement and to
Right.
and to be the net essentially to scoop up whoever comes running out. The day they launch the mission, we go out. It's huge. Everyone's tense. Everyone's like, you know, uh, we basically flew around in a Chinook for like 3 or 4 hours.
Which is not a lot of fun.
It was
Flying
miserable.
around in helo.
Holding our urine, try
Yeah.
not to piss ourselves.
And hoping you didn't get hit by a ah
By
what
anything.
I
What
want to
was
say
the
law, but what's the Soviet
RPG
RPG?
or the
RPG.
the
Yeah,
man
they shot
pads?
down more than
Yeah.
one Chinook, by the way, with RPGs. Hey, and by the way, for our to de-jargonize a little bit, a QRF, we may have said it before, that's a quick reaction force. Rangers do that a lot. It's a force that can follow on if somebody gets in a jam. They can be in the area of operation and get there pretty quick and get guns on the ground to help out in whatever capacity.
Yeah. We like the military likes overmatch. We like minimum 3-1 odds or something like
Right.
that whenever we do anything. So often what'll happen is an element will come into contact, and if they feel like they want to plus up to have that overmatch, that's where, especially when we're supporting, tier one elements, that'll be that. So if they're like, ooh, there are a decent amount of guys on the ground. I want the
Yeah.
Rangers in. I want the Rangers in here to get to help out. So, but we flew for like 4 hours. They never inserted us because they never found anything, I guess. And so we landed back, but that our sister platoon, like I said, ended up out there for a week. So we came back
Oh
and we
man.
changed and went to the chow hall and relaxed and said, "Wow, what a waste." But we were getting combat pay, so we were stoked. We were stoked about the tax-free combat pay, and they
Laughing all the way to the bank.
they come back after that week and they're all bleary eyed. They've all got beards from being out there. They're disgusting. They smell and they just hate us. I remember we were talking on the phones, talking back home. And so anywho, that's funny though. It's
Yeah.
funny. It's funny to enjoy the misery of like your other platoon mates or company mates.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of stories ahead on that. I don't know why it's so funny, but it just is.
It is.
Everybody's got to do what they got to do, and you got to embrace the suck on whatever level. But it's kind of funny. Well, yeah. Anyway.
So we were there, and this was towards the end of our training cycle, and they were telling us that we were just going to stay there. Hey, you all are just going to stay here. 275 will rotate out, and then you'll just pick up. But then luckily, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fortune of being in special operations, is they've got a lot more resources. They said, you know what, we're just sending you all back. So we were over there for like a month, maybe a month and a half, something like that, and then they put us back on planes and we flew back home. We flew back home. I think we maybe did big one big training event, and then they sent us on block leave before it was supposed to be our turn to come back. So um so yeah, that was my, technically that counts as a deployment, as a rotation.
Right.
But that was just surging ahead just to hang out. I would have loved for Osama to have been there and for us to get into something fun, but it's another one of those situations, right? Like you're on a hair trigger to deploy and to go do work, and sometimes it works out. A lot of times it doesn't work out. A lot of
Oh
times you
yeah.
go to do a mission and there's no one there, or the wrong person's there.
More times than not, it does not work out.
Yeah.
And if you want to bring up a sore subject with some of the guys that were going after bin Laden, it's, oh, we have intel reports of a 6 foot tall man in flowing white robes. And they're just like, roll their eyes. Yeah, right. Yeah, here we go. So that's
So
kind of an inside joke.
So yeah, I mean, and I still have, I don't know if this will get me in trouble. I think I've got time on my side now, but I've got some basic products, Intel products from that mission, quote unquote mission, where it's got like the targets listed out, and you got Osama bin Laden there and all his buddies. We got the pictures of them. I still got that, and I remember I actually took along with me because they built it up so much, almost to the point where they're trying to freak us out. But they were like, hey, this could be a big deal if it's him. He could have all the support. And we're flying out, and this was my first time in Afghanistan, by the way. I've been to Iraq before. This is my first time seeing Afghanistan and just seeing the mountains. I was like, whoa. So I took a full sized map of the objective area, and technically you're supposed to clean your map before you insert, but I didn't. So I still can see my little map pen markings of where we were supposed to. I can see the saddle where we were supposed to insert. There's just
Right.
nothing. There's just nothing there. it's
Yeah.
just nothing, just highly mountainous, nothing there. Um, it's pretty cool. I have the products from the mission that never was.
How high up was it, elevation wise?
I have to check. It was high. It
Gotta
was
go
hot.
check your topo.
I could tell you exactly if I look it up.
Yeah.
They were talking. I mean, we were talking about, hey, do we drop plates for this? You know, I
Yeah.
mean, and that's getting high
Yeah.
if the Rangers are actually allowing you to think about doing that. We were talking about right sizing our loads. What do we take? What do we don't take? All that type of stuff.
Was there snow on the ground?
I think this was during the summertime
Okay. Yeah.
because my next full deployment was back in Afghanistan later, you know, just a few months later, and that was during winter. So I think this was more, and it was hot, yeah. So this was more towards the summer,
Gotcha.
but those are high mountains. Maybe there's snow there. It's people have been
Yeah.
surprised before. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that got me to that. I think that's a good stopping place. That was
Nice.
that was cathartic for me. That's at the very least.
And we're going
So
to talk about your full deployment to
we're talking
Afghanistan.
about the next one, and that was crazy. So
Yeah.
it more than made up for that little for that appetizer. So
Nice.
that's it. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.